yeah, so I'm really excited to have Keith here and for us to kind of celebrate this time. And ironically, this is it. This is actually the week where the last week of, if you look back 50 years ago, of when last time humans were on the moon. Apollo 17 was the last mission. So
very close to this
yeah.
Christmas time.
So to everybody in the crowd, let's give Mr. Keith Krumm. Let's give him some applause. Yeah, everybody online. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Keith Krumm here. All right. Let's see. Stop share.
All right.
Take over.
I will share my desktop. So tonight I have a kind of a bunch of multi media things, and so I'm going to try them out, and I think they'll work. We'll try them out at home today. My wife was upstairs, and I was downstairs. We were on Zoom going through this. I would say that I remember Apollo 17, 1972. I remember it was the last one. It was sad. I remember Apollo 11. I was sitting in my grandmother's house in Spokane, and I had a Saturn V rocket that was about a 3-foot Saturn V rocket, and I was able to show everybody simply how the lunar module worked and the command module and all that stuff. And it was really fun. Those were my earliest days of outreach when I was 15. So Apollo 17 was a little different. I think I may have been actually in this room because I had physics. I took physics here. I'm not sure if it was this room though, for sure. I don't know if this building was here then, but if it was, it would have been physics 107 or 6 or 5 or whatever it is. And so I remember that. I remember that very well. Now, that said, I didn't remember too many details about Apollo 17, so I've been studying like crazy. So for those of you who remember things about it or can help me remember things about it, I appreciate anyone and everyone chiming in. Also, for those who weren't around, this is an opportunity to talk about and recognize kind of standing on the shoulders of giants. So can you see, what do you see? You see my,
Yeah, do you want to expand that?
yeah, I'll do a full screen here. Is that better? How's that? Before I start into that, speaking of the shoulders of giants, I wanted to talk about two guys, both University of Washington graduates. Oh, I put on the subtitles there too, by the way. You see that? Okay, good. I'm trying a few things tonight that I haven't done before. So, Michael P. Anderson. So that's, of course, a very sad story, Columbia accident. We're coming up on the 20th anniversary of that sad event. And he was a UW grad in 1981. And Richard P. Gordon, who lived a nice, long life, he was a UW grad in 1951. So, and let's see, I cut off his programs here on my, yeah, okay, Gemini 9 and Apollo 12. Oh, that's right, Apollo 12. He was supposed to be landing on the moon. He was the command module pilot for Apollo 12. He was supposed to land on the moon with Apollo 18, but there wasn't Apollo 18. So Richard Gordon moved on to other things, and so did the space program. Okay, so recognize standing on some shoulders of UW grad giants. All right, that's not working. Okay, I won't use it. So NASA provides so much good stuff. I just can't not use some of it. And this is a really great 3-minute movie that they put on YouTube that I thought was worth showing, and I hope it comes through well.
What I believe history will record that America's challenge of today has forged man's destiny of tomorrow. And as we leave as we came, and God willing, as we shall return. Godspeed, the crew of Apollo 17.
10, 9, 8, 7, ignition sequence started. All engines are started. We have ignition. 2, 1, 0. We have a liftoff.
17 Houston, you are go for orbit. Go for orbit.
America, Houston, this is America. You can breathe easier. America has arrived on station for the challenge ahead. Oh, are we coming in? Oh, baby. Okay, Houston, the Challenger has landed. We'd like to dedicate the first steps of Apollo 17 to all those who made it possible. Oh, my golly. Unbelievable. This has got to be one of the most proud moments of my life, I guarantee you. The words are here man completed his first exploration of the moon. December 1972 AD. May the spirit of peace in which we came be reflected in the lives of all mankind. When we look back at the Apollo program, I don't think anyone can privately to themselves or publicly say that this truly, indeed, has really been a beginning of man's really first venture out into deep space. And once there's a beginning, there's a continuation. A trip to Mars may not be for 10 years, a decade, it may not be till the end of the century. But I personally have faith that it will happen. And I think that the nature of mankind just press on. That's why I believe Apollo 17, yes, it's the beginning. But the whole Apollo program is really the true beginning of what's to come in the future. Godspeed and God bless you all.
So this was I love this news release. Sorry, I'm getting my head back straight on here. So this was the news release that came out. I love this comprehensive 50, 60 page news release. Has all of the different things that were going to be done on the moon. And you can see this lift here. I can get my cursor on it. We're going to go through a lot of these tonight, just at a high level, but we'll go through them and just remind ourselves why we did 17. And that really strikes me as really interesting about the geology and about things like what is the gravity, what is the interior of the moon, and what they did some atmospheric things, and so we'll talk about all those. But I love these typed up 50-year ago press kits. Look a lot different than the ones we get today. Of course, we had to compare to.
That's
Close
good. Yeah. Let's turn that off.
I didn't see that.
And then let's turn that off.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, we're good.
All right. So I had to compare 16 to 17, not that different, and we'll talk about where the two landed. They're pretty close. One was a night, Apollo 17 was a night launch, 16 was a day launch, and you can see the other data on there about how many hours both missions were, and some of the trajectories that are a little different. Okay, the three guys were Eugene Cernan, born in 1934, and he's still alive. And Jack Schmidt, 1935, and Ronald Evans, who died at 56. And move this out of the way. So there they are, and there are their different missions that they led. Okay. So it all began, with a lot of training, as NASA astronauts get. Schmidt was in Flagstaff, Arizona, around craters for a long time doing training on how to collect samples and use the different cameras that they had. And then the rover was called Grover, and there they are in Montana training on Grover, the rover. I think most people know the Saturn V rocket was 363 feet tall, launched from the famous pad at Complex 39, Kennedy Space Center. So there were technical issues that caused it to go dry. It caused it to be 2 hours and 40 minutes late. I'll try another audio. If it doesn't work, we won't go with audio again. So here was the audio of what was going on then. Hopefully. Don't think that's going to work, do you? Okay, we won't try that. It's a very interesting. It's a very interesting communication that they have about the leak that they found, and what the upshot of it was that everything had to happen in a certain sequence, and even though they got all the stuff done, it wasn't in the right sequence, so they had to shut it all down and kind of reboot the whole thing before they could actually launch. And it's really interesting the way he talks about it. I'm sorry we didn't figure out the sound better. I'm not sure how to do this. Aaron will have to figure that out so we can play audio better. Okay. But, we used to talk a lot about follow the process. Always follow the process. Like baking cookies or making a pie, you got to follow the recipe, follow the process. And that's what they did. And it all came out fine. So good news. Kind of an old graphic that I liked, showing the size versus the Empire, or versus, not the Empire State Building, versus the Statue of Liberty. So real basic picture of the spacecraft. So I think probably most people are familiar with the command module area here in the middle, the service module. This is where the rover was stored, and I got a graphic of that. And, the antennas and the engine bells. This was, of course, what landed on the moon, for those of you who haven't looked at this for a while. Sorry, that keeps flipping. And so that's the basics behind. And for those of you who don't remember or didn't ever study this, the command module and the service module linked up in space with the lunar module, and then orbited a couple times before the lunar module landed, and we'll see that in a minute. Here's a picture of Earth over time as they moved out toward the moon. And this is where Apollo 17 landed here. This was the actual picture of the actual time. So that's what the moon looked like from North America at the time they landed. And that's where it was, in the Taurus-Litow Valley. And you can see where the other Apollo landings were there on the picture. Taurus-Litow Valley. So Mars Serenitatis. This was picked because you can see it's a valley that was a lava area, and so there were younger rocks in this area, and then the mountainous area where there were older samples, where they get older samples. So this was a good area where they could drive out to the mountains, pick up some older stuff, and come back and pick up some younger stuff that had been disrupted by meteors. Okay, Houston, Challenger's landed. So, so it was a science-focused mission that we said had a lot to do with lunar geology and sample collection. And again, this is a preamble. I'll go through these in more detail as we go. This was one of the first color pictures that they took. I think this was the first color picture that Apollo 17 took. Focused on the lunar focused and space environment focused. So they did do a lot of work on cosmic rays and the effect on astronauts. So surface electrical properties, lunar neutron probe, traverse gravimeter, and cosmic ray detector, as we talked about. And I had not seen how the rover came out of the spacecraft before. I didn't know how they did it. So that little GIF there shows how it came down and unfolded. The Boeing rover. I'd forgotten it was Boeing. Boy, I tell you. Sorry, I'm going to pause here for a second. I apologize. Okay. So the ALSCP had three major components to it. Studying heat flow, which was, of course, heat coming out of the surface of, from underneath the surface to the surface from the interior. There was a lot of seismic profiling, recording of vibrations. Of course, now you can start to record these vibrations and figure out what the interior of the moon was all about. And then also studying the gravity and lunar gravity acceleration. Lunar atmospheric composition experiment had to do with making a direct measurement of the vertical components of heat flow from the lunar surface. So already talked about that a little bit. And then the ejected meteorites kind of coming after the secondary particles that had been ejected from meteorites. So trying to collect those. And they did. Several hundred pounds. So exploring the surface, there were two primary objectives here in this mission about the surface of the moon. To get samples from the older highland areas and to also investigate the recent explosive volcanism, as I said there. And these were both highly successful. So one of the things that they found out was that from one of the oldest known unshocked or meteorites that hadn't, rock that had not been impacted by a meteorite called unshocked, it was a sample called Trogdolite with the number, and it was believed to be over 4 billion years old. And the interesting thing about that is that it showed that the moon once had a interior generated dynamo and had a magnetic field. So that was a big discovery that Apollo 17 made. Also, the volcanic moon glass. So they picked up these tiny particles that were 3.5 billion years old, and that was another surface collection. Jack Schmidt said that it was glass had been spewed out from some fire fountain-like eruption 3.5 billion years ago. So that was a good discovery as well. So again, the two main things were the magnetic field generated by the domino in the core and the more recent volcanic activity in this area. They discovered those two things. That picture is one of the core sampling tubes that they used. I think there were 3 of them. Continuing on into 2019, now data comes back from these missions, and they use it for years and years. And just in 2019, published in Nature, they found evidence that there was a fault that still has producing moonquakes today. And so this scarp, called the Lee-Lincoln Scarp, and this is from Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter that shows the scarp that's still causing moonquakes today. And this is the area where Apollo 17 landed. So it's really great data from the LRO. Fascinating scarp. And they drove there and took samples from it. So this was the longest traverse in a single extra vehicle activity. It went 22 miles, 4 hours and 29 minutes of driving, 12.5 miles in a single EVA. Quite an extensive journey they had. Happened, EVA 2 was 7 hours and 37 minutes, as it says there, and they collected 462 pounds. Excuse me, the LRV was 462 pounds on Earth. I thought this was an interesting thing, and on the moon it weighed 77 pounds, so the astronauts could actually pick it up and turn it. They had handles on it that they could pick it up and turn it. So that was pretty interesting. That was something I think I had known once, but forgot. And if you haven't seen it driving around, this was actually Apollo 16, but this was the best video I found of them. They called it the Grand Prix for Apollo 16. So that was kind of fun to see them driving around on the moon. I do have sound here. I'll have to say that one of the things that I kind of remembered after going through this was these guys had a lot of fun up there. I mean, they were singing songs. It was Christmas. They were recognizing Christmas. They were recognizing the holiday season. They were throwing hammers. They were they were doing all kinds of stuff that was just a lot of fun. It seemed like when you go through all the videos, and I'm sorry we probably can't show them tonight because of tech issues, but all three of these guys were just having a ball up there for the time they were there. And so, you know, here he is in the merry, merry month of December. No May. And yeah, da 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 da. Yeah, they were having a good time. And then there was a long restatement of the night before Christmas. The samples were stowed in place with care, and I won't play. Unfortunately, I won't play the audio because we'll have to figure it out, Aaron. I do have the audio here, so it's fun to listen to.
I did ask everyone here too, if you want a link to the presentation and some of these audio, just email activities. I put it in the chat as well.
Good, yeah, easy to do. And beautiful, I think just one of the most beautiful pictures of any of the Apollo missions in my mind was this portrait of Jack Schmitt with the flag and the Earth in the background there. It's iconic. There's a bunch of iconic ones, but that's another one of them. Okay, well, we can try to show the liftoff. See what happened. It has sound, but.
Sawyer, I have a thrower at your geology you ought to be able to throw. You ready? Go ahead. You ready for this? Ready for this? Yeah. Don't hit the lamp. Or the outfit.
Oh, this is the hammer throwing.
Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Beautiful. Looked like it was going 1,000,000 miles, but it really did. Didn't it?
Yeah, sorry. Go on mute here. So yeah, there's the hammer actually, right there. He just wanted to have fun. I don't think there was any other reason for it. He wanted to see how far he could throw a hammer. sorry, jumping around here. So there's the track they went on, laid over Manhattan. So I don't know how many of you walked this Manhattan, but that's a lot. That's a lot. You know, that's like 25 miles, right? And this is where they landed again. See, at Tranquility, where Apollo 11 was. Nice graphic of the area. LRO data is, look at that. There it is. That's where they drove. All those craters. Okay. Farewell Moon. Try it again.
Page, push. Mission arm is up. Okay, I'm going to get the pro. 99, proceeded. 3, 2, 1. Ignition. Burn away, Houston. Vector good. Ag side.
It's always amazing to see that thing just jump off there.
Here you have good thrust. Okay, 30 seconds. 308 your number. Take going through 1500. What days?
And each mission has its own Earthrise. That was the Apollo 17 Earthrise, another beauty. Okay, so the orbital science experiments, there was almost as much going on in orbit. So, you know, the lunar sounder, which was trying to map subsurface, especially for electrical conductivity, IR scanning to measure thermal emissions from the surface. There was a UV spectrometer, had to do with UV emissions from the atmosphere. So they were actually studying the very tenuous atmosphere on the moon. And then there was a gravity experiments to try to understand more about the gravity. And then the last but not least, sorry, all right, tricky here. We have this setup. So, yeah, the cosmic ray and its effect on spacecraft. So biomedical, again, cosmic rays and trying to figure out how they affect astronauts and equipment. Heat flow and convection demonstrations. And I had forgotten all about the meteoroid experiments and what they did there with meteoroids and how they impact the window surfaces. So really important, especially when getting into the space station. And then that was a 31-meter diameter crater from part of the spacecraft that crashed in there. They did that on purpose. They did that on purpose for all the missions so that they could work on the seismometers and make sure they were working properly. That also helps figure out what the interior, more of the interior of the moon is. And Ronald Evans had a EVA on the way back and picked up, he was out there for over an hour, picked up the film cassettes and a bunch of the things, the mapping cameras and panoramic cameras, and brought them back in. Deep spacewalk for him. Splashdown. Looks just like Artemis. That was so cool. A cake. Got to have the cake. Of course, the rocks now, you know, there were 741 pounds of rocks. Interesting thing, they're still working on them. They said they had the foresight, not surprisingly, to set aside a whole lot of them untouched. And they're now using different methods for analyzing the rocks that they didn't have back then, like non-destructive 3D imaging. They're starting to do some of that to try to figure out how to better, use better technology to analyze these things. So by the numbers, they had over 22 hours outside the lander. They had 22 miles of driving. I said 25 around Manhattan. That was about close. 243 pounds of samples and 302 hours of total mission time. So that was pretty big. The command module is named America, and it's down in Houston. Did you see the one? Did we see the one at the? Which one was at the Museum of Flight? I forget. I saw that one.
Yeah, I think as well too. I'm not sure. Yeah, but if anyone's on the call, you can see this something similar at the Museum of Flight right now.
Yeah. So I was going to play this. This is the great speech. Not sure how it'll come through. Any sound there?
It's a feedback loop for you.
We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other thing. Not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
So that's the famous line, not because they're easy, but because they're hard. Great speech. One of the things that I didn't know that I learned was he gave a joint speech to Congress sometime like in a year before this, where he went into a lot of depth about Apollo program. And not just the Apollo program. He talked about going to Mars. He talked about going to our outer solar system. And he said, go to the outer solar system before the end of the century, which we did not do. But it's quite a speech. And again, if you would like to hear that, it's really interesting historically, really what he was after. Not just going to the moon, but in the joint session of Congress, going a lot further than just the moon. Click on the right thing here. So, looking ahead to Artemis 3, I don't know. I watched the Artemis splashdown. It was absolutely fantastic on NASA TV Live. It was so fun to see, and just chilling. I thought I was jumping up and down like a kid. And Artemis 3 landing sites at the South Pole, they're still working on which ones to pick here. So you can see on the screen, these are all the different possibilities. They are going to the South Pole, though. So that will be in a couple of years, maybe, hopefully, a couple of years. Yeah.
Well, Artemis 2 is 2024, 2025, right? Something like that.
Yeah, a couple of years. Or 2 is a couple of years. And there's more info, lots more info in here. Again, if you want to see more info and more detail, these are some interesting graphics that show the distances compared to different cities that the different programs traverse. And there's a whole bunch of links and additional resources. So, okay, thoughts and comments? Questions?
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it. Any questions from our online community or here? Great stuff.